Welcome back. Thank you for joining us. We are continuing in ordinary time now with the Wedding of Cana reading from John's Gospel, and Amy is going to go ahead and read that.
A
By the way,
reading.
Amy's a Baltimore fan, and they're playing the Bills this weekend. We just wanted to talk about that beforehand. Okay, so
Okay.
so we have to pray for each other. Okay.
Yes. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to John. There was a wedding at Cana in Galilee, and the mother of Jesus was there. Jesus and his disciples were also invited to the wedding. When the wine ran short, the mother of Jesus said to him, "They have no wine." And Jesus said to her, "Woman, how does your concern affect me? My hour has not yet come." His mother said to the others, "Do whatever he tells you." Now there were 6 stone jars there for Jewish ceremonial washings, each holding 20 to 30 gallons. Jesus told them, "Fill the jars with water." So they filled them to the brim. Then he told them, Draw some out now and take it to the headwaiter." So they took it. And when the headwaiter tasted the water that had become wine, without knowing where it had come from, although the servers who had drawn the water knew, the headwaiter called the bridegroom and said to him, "Everyone serves good wine first, and then when people have drunk freely, an inferior one. But you have kept the good wine until now." Jesus did this as the beginning of his signs at Cana in Galilee, and so revealed his glory, and his disciples began to believe in him. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ. So we get used to hearing things about these readings that are common, or we might even put them in the category of the accepted interpretation. And that's a very strange thing if you think about it. If you read a commentary perhaps from Augustine on a certain reading, maybe even Aquinas, or someone talking about a certain passage from ages past, you would be stunned to know how different it is from what we talk about now, or what is highlighted from what we talk about. These things change. It does not mean that our understanding of the reading changes. It does, but it means it develops. You might come from a culture. Augustine might have been in a culture that was much more symbolically basing, like interpreting them much more symbolically than we do. And you might have people who take it very literally. But one time I preached on this reading, and someone came up to me and said, "Well, Father, you don't have it wrong. You have it right. This is what it means." Boom, and that happens every once in a while. But it's not. That isn't the point. The point is that you've got to look at it for what is always consistent in it, and what is that about this reading, or any reading that we talk about? What is it that's always something that we can say is most essential to it? What doesn't change? Our interpretations may change based on time and place and so on and so forth and culture, but what is it that it stays constant? And what stays constant throughout the ages is that he connects this point, the beginning of his ministry, with the end of his ministry, with the crucifixion, the beginning of the end, so to speak, with the crucifixion. And that is something that I don't think anybody really talks about nowadays, although I think Fulton Sheen may have mentioned it in one of his catechism series. Maybe not as directly as I do, but he mentions the use of this word woman. So instead of going and saying, okay, this is what it means, and not thinking about it again, whenever you come to a reading, pray with it. Think about it what is it that you're trying, that is trying to be communicated. And what it is this idea of by the use of the word woman here and from the cross, he connects these two moments in time. And it's interesting that the writer does that. So you always get that question. Oh, he says, "Woman, how does your concern affect me? My hour has not come." Well, he never uses the word hour without meaning his passion and death. So he connects it also to the end, to the passion and death there by the use of the word hour. Then when his hour does come, he looks and he says, "Woman, behold your son." And from that moment, the beloved disciple took her into his home. That is really, really central to it. But when we ask ourselves why these two moments, what do they have in common? What is it? That unpacks for us a whole world of just really wonderful and insightful, deep insights into the faith that we share. The use of the word woman here and at the end is to say, I call, Fulton Sheen said it like, I call you woman if you understand. So to explain that a little bit, he goes, do you want me just to provide wine for these things? Do you understand what you're asking me to do? If you want me to begin my signs, do you understand where that's going? Do you see, woman, where it's going? And if you do, then I call you woman in terms of the woman, the woman, and maybe in terms of mother. Then you become the woman, the woman who has by her action begun all of this, or made this possible for us. Then on the cross, when he says woman, he says the woman again. Behold your son. If he had said Mary, you're talking about Mary and John, or the beloved disciple, or whatever, or Mary, the mother of Jesus. But it's not. It's woman, mother of all. So I like that explanation. I think it does a lot more than just the little popular explanations of what happens here. The beginning of his ministry begins at a wedding, and it ends at the marriage of heaven and earth. I probably could go on and talk about the sacrament of marriage here and why this is really the reason that the marriage that marriages between Catholics are celebrated at masses, because of that reality, because that this wedding is connected to the marriage of heaven and earth. And a very wonderful theologian once said, marriage is a sacrament because the Eucharist is a wedding. And it's that kind of symbolism that we see, that heaven and earth have come together, that God and his people have come together, that the head of the body, the church, Jesus Christ, and his people are one body, made one in that saving marriage that has been ushered in by God himself through with and in Jesus Christ. It's an astonishing thing. I always like it when this reading comes up. I always love it when it's chosen for weddings. But it's got that tremendous Eucharistic sense to it that's not explicitly mentioned, but but elsewhere the wedding feast of the Lamb has begun, and all those things that we call the imagery that we use to explain the Eucharist to people is almost always nuptial. It's got a lot of marriage to it, and you have these things. But these things are important in that way. So, and I don't want to say that you can't think about it any other way. That's the opposite of what I'm saying, is saying, but look when you're dealing with any religious idea for what is always true, eternal, and for some of the interpretation that might change a little bit just based on time and place and everything. Doesn't mean it's bad, it's good, because we know that the gospel has to be proclaimed to human beings who themselves are always in a little bit different of a place than they were before. You figure in the terms of the existence of the earth and 4.5 billion years and so on and so forth, that the earth's been around in the universe even much longer than that, but 100 years is like a blink of an eye. And yet when we see pictures of the pastor and from the church, first of all, we can't find them. We see them every once in a long while. We'll find a picture from 100 years ago and we'll go, wow, that must have been vastly different then. And that's only 100 years. Or you hear music from 100 years ago and you go, wow, how different was the world then, you know? So you think about how things changed just in 100 years. You don't have to do that. You can think about how they've changed since the 1990s, when Amy and I were both 39 again. Notice how things have changed since we were in the 1990s when we were born. But anyway, think about that. And really, when you come to this reading, it's the theological connecting of this to the crucifixion that I don't think people really appreciate, that is really essential to our understanding of this. And it's using this word woman in both of those places. I'm not sure if he uses it elsewhere, but he might, but in John's gospel, but off the top of my head, I don't think he does, but it'd be interesting to see how that played out. I don't believe he uses the name Mary at all in John's gospel. He uses the mother of Jesus, or he says woman, and the use of that word makes her mother of us all. It's really wonderful, very beautiful. So I offer you that this week. Very cold here, and we didn't have heat in the building for 2 days, so they'll probably tell you that I made them slave and work in the cold, but it didn't happen that way. And then the heat was out at church this morning too. But everything is working now. We're nice and warm, so I hope wherever you are, you're doing well. We continue to pray for people in California and for any places in the world that's dealing with tremendous hardships, whether they're war or natural disasters or other things. Really continue to pray for people and for peace in our world and for peaceful transition of power next week. So bless you all, and thank you all very much for joining us, and we'll see you next week.